brought to you by Charity Mobile, the phone company that supports life and family. 5% of your monthly plan price goes to your favorite charity. Buy the way you believe at CharityMobile.com and use promo code TRADITION. We are in the octave of Easter. He is risen. One of my favorite times of year. Really, truly is. The joys of the faith are on full display, and it's hard to talk about really negative things in the octave of Easter because it's a joyful liturgical season. Perhaps the most joyful of all. In fact, it should be the most joyful of all because the octave of Easter, we commemorate the triumph of our blessed Lord on the cross. So bad news stories are hard to really talk about this time of year, but as they come, I will do my job and present them to you. I want to give you something that's a little bit different. Some of you may not see this as a good thing. Others will. Let's have a debate in the comments if you would like. Just please do so with charity and respect, okay? We're generally all on the same side of things here most of the time. My own state of Oklahoma has made some national news recently for a lot of reasons, but most especially pertinent to our story is there has been an internal debate among members of the same party in the state legislature and in the state government about the funding through state tax dollars of a Catholic private school. The governor has supported this, as has the Secretary of Education, and they have come out and said that they want this for any religious school. But they've, of course, had to go to court for this because of the same party. The state's Attorney General has said no, thinks that this is unconstitutional. So we're going to go talk about the story and sort of a bit of the history of this topic, because many of you may not be aware of this, but one of the reasons that the United States has a public school system in general was because in the early days of the Republic, Catholics were not exactly looked upon positively, and Catholic schools were starting to open up everywhere, and there were people who were wanting to have their kids educated there because the education was top tier. And there were either no public alternatives or very few public alternatives. And so you started having the establishment of the public school system to prevent that from happening, from non-Catholic students going to Catholic schools. Because what happens when you do that? A lot of them become Catholic because before the errors that we now have of our modern age, Catholic schools made the faith central to the education. You learned scripture from nuns, you learned the rosary, you asked everything about the faith. The Christian part of the education was Catholic. And it wasn't like neutral, ecumenical. It was Catholic. And so the fear that a lot of those who developed what would become the public school system was that the Catholic school system would replace everything. And eventually America would become a Catholic nation. That was the fear. That was motivation behind this. And you started having a lot of alternative ideas for a public school system. Go read Thomas Jefferson's Notes on Virginia. I wrote my master's thesis on Thomas Jefferson. His Notes on Virginia has a very interesting look at Virginia's public school system, or what would become the public school system there, how it was funded, everything. But the Catholic education system has always been under scrutiny here. There were attempts, as we'll talk about here, in some states to actually end private schools, specifically because of nuns and Catholic schools. But let's go to our main story first here, which comes to us from Crux Now, who claims to be taking the Catholic pulse. Their headline is, Amid Lawsuits, Nation's First State-Funded Catholic School Opens Applications. Again, this is in my state of Oklahoma. This has been all over the news locally, and will probably factor into a lot of the local contests coming up in November. Although the governor's not up, nor unless I'm mistaken, I don't think the Secretary of Education is up either. But this is a hot button topic here, and I really want to know what Catholics in the audience think. Is what my state doing right or not? Curious what you say, because I've got a lot of mixed feelings about this, but I think in general, I don't have a problem with it, other than the state of Catholic schools and what requirements the state may try to impose on said schools, other than the basic education requirements that they've had for private schools anyway for 100 years or more. From the article, though, quote, As of March 25th, 120 students have applied for the school and 50 other families have expressed interest. The school, created by the Archdiocese of Oklahoma and the Diocese of Tulsa, has previously said it plans to have an initial enrollment of 500 students. Bishop David Condorla of Tulsa announced that the application opened in a March 5th letter that was published on March 18th, in which he highlighted that the school will help the Oklahoma dioceses reach families, quote, in all corners of our state. He also acknowledged the legal challenges that exist. St. Isidore will be a tremendous blessing to those in Oklahoma who would otherwise not have access to a Catholic education, Condorla wrote. Legal challenges still exist, but we remain strong in our pursuit of this worthy endeavor. We ask for your prayers and will continue to pray for you and your parishes. St. Isidore Seville Catholic Virtual School is a virtual K-12 Catholic school in Oklahoma that is tuition-free and funded by the state as a charter school. The application is open to any eligible student for kindergarten to grade 12, Catholic or otherwise, living in the state of Oklahoma. Controversy has surrounded the school since its inception on the grounds that it is a religious institution that is funded by the state. The statewide virtual charter school board approved a contract with the school on October 9, 2023, making it the nation's first state-funded religious school. 11 days later, Oklahoma Attorney General Gentner Drummond sued the board for its decision. In a statement on the day the lawsuit was filed, Drummond said the board members violated the religious liberty of every Oklahoman by forcing us to fund the teachings of a specific religious group within our tax dollars. He also said he is prepared to litigate the issue to the U.S. Supreme Court if he has to. There is no religious freedom in compelling Oklahomans to fund religions that may violate their own deeply held beliefs, Gentner argued. The framers of the U.S. Constitution and those who drafted Oklahoma's Constitution clearly understood how to best protect religious freedom by preventing the state from sponsoring any religion at all. End quote. That's a novel reading, I will tell you, of the church-state issue from history, because that's not generally how it was recognized going back throughout history. The Constitution just says the church won't, or the government won't establish an official religion. I would be perfectly fine with if Catholics can have this, then you give it to others as too. But I also understand completely the other issue, the other vision here. In fact, I can understand Catholics not wanting to fund a Southern Baptist school or something that's not even Christian. Use your imagination. But this is not a new issue. There has been a general hostility to Catholic education in the culture. Again, going back to the founding era. But there's a landmark Supreme Court case that goes back to the 1920s. And so we go to the Salt Lake Tribune for this, for a good overview. Their headline is, "A century ago, one state tried to close religious schools. Far cry from today with controversial plans in place for the nation's first faith-based charter school. In recent years, the Supreme Court has increasingly allowed public funding to go to faith-based schools, their students, or both." So most of the public funding that you see with these schools now comes in the form of vouchers. A lot of states in the last 10, 15 years have implemented a voucher system for public funding, for funding of schools, where you as a parent could take essentially a certain amount of tax dollars, probably not what you paid in taxes, by the way, but just a certain amount of money, take your kids out of the public school and take them to a private school of your choosing. This would include religious schools. People fought that. They fought it and lost to the Supreme Court multiple times. But that Salt Lake Tribune article goes back in detail to an attempt by the state of Oregon, my old home state, who in the 1920s tried to shut down a Catholic school run by nuns. Why would they try that? Because it goes back to America's history and its animosity towards the Catholic Church and our faith. We are outsiders, essentially, in our own country because of our faith. And as a consequence, the nuns won the right to keep their school open. Because on its face, obviously, they had a right, Catholics have a right, just as any other group does, to offer education that conforms to our values. But that argument has evolved in this intervening century to, should people have the right to use their tax contribution or the amount allocated to them for that would be representing how much their kid would get at public schools funding, to take that money elsewhere to another school? That's been a hot button debate. Or do you and I have the right to have our schools funded by the state in the same way that others do? And here's why. One of the things that people don't talk about often is that you usually only hear this from more people on the quote unquote our side, whatever that means, of the political spectrum, will point out that the state's system itself is religious in nature, that there is no such thing as a separation between the two, that they promote their own religion, which is essential hostility to our faith and Christianity more broadly, that it's built into the system. When I was a kid, I remember parents complaining about things the secular system was doing. Relatively innocent looking compared to what we see now. But I remember that when I was a kid. And my parents' generation remembers that, going all the way back, at least to the 1920s. You cannot have a void there. Some form of spirituality will go into that void when you try to remove religion from it. And the spirituality they have is the spirituality of nihilism, essentially. That's what their system is. And so I am perfectly fine, really, with the state involved in this. That's myself. You may think I'm wrong, and because of the state requirements on education or something. You may be wrong. Feel free to disagree. We can have a friendly debate about this in the comments if you like. But I am curious what you think. Is this a good thing or not? I'm pretty clear that I think this is generally a good thing, although I'm curious what the consequences will be. But let me know in the comments. What do you think of this happening for Oklahoma and more broadly? And if you're in Oklahoma, because I know some of you are, let me know your thoughts on this too. Especially if you've lived here longer than I have, because I've only been in Oklahoma for 7 years. So I'm curious what the rest of you have to say in the comments, please. And to like and subscribe if you haven't, it does help. So does sharing this on social media. That absolutely helps too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.